we're going into the weeds of, what does it look like to actually fill the job of a campus pastor? I always think whenever we're preparing for these conversations, somebody maybe like you 3 years ago who gets that call is like, so what exactly am I going to be doing? What does this mean to be a campus pastor?
Sure. Yeah. And just like you said, it's such a relatively new position. So there's not a lot of books I can read. There's not a lot of people I can
Yeah.
even talk to. And so one of my best friends in the world says being a campus pastor is like having someone hand you the keys to a brand new car and just say, don't wreck it.
Yeah.
And so, although that's not exactly the case, there's some similarities to that metaphor. So, as a campus pastor, one of my biggest the biggest privileges I have to work with is just championing the church culture at a different location. And so, as the pastor there, I have the honor to lead those people pastorally, while our senior pastor and the executive pastor preaches regularly. So there are different systems for campus pastors. I don't know, or for campuses, and I don't know how much you want to get in the weeds in this, but there are some that live stream the sermons every week, which that's what we do. There are some who preach individually at different campuses, and then there's some that mix that up. There are some that rotate. So anyway, there's different methods
Yeah.
and to keep that same culture. Well, for us, our senior pastor, for the most part, is at the broadcast location in West Monroe, which means that I am the boots on the ground for trying to champion that culture, making sure that people understand that we are one church. We just have multiple locations, and trying to help our people feel as loved and as honored as possible, and vice versa with the other campuses.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of the questions I was going to ask was I know there are different models. You see different
Hmm.
people doing this. So the approach there would be that mainly the broadcast site would where the preaching would happen, and that would come in to the Ruston campus. And also there's another campus in Sterlington, so there's a
That's
couple
correct.
of different locations there for the church. So, okay, so that I think that's a good perspective because it can look very different. So, understanding that, let's go into what does your week look like? I mean, what fills up the calendar, the schedule? I know you do it all, but let's just talk through what that includes. What does the week look like?
Y- Yeah, sure. So one of the things that's unique about working in a couple of locations is I do have an office in West Monroe, and then I do have an office in Ruston, which means I split my week. Um, for the most part, our pastoral staff will take Mondays off, so the day after the big service. So usually Mondays are rest day. I try, and we could talk for days about
Yes.
what rest is, and that's such an interesting concept. But and taking a Sabbath. But that Monday is that Sabbath day for us, for my
Okay.
family, and so we try to guard that really well if we can. And then Tuesday is a meeting day, so that's the first day that all the staff is back in the office, and we work hard to set up not only big corporate meetings with the entire staff, but individual meetings. And so we'll meet on different aspects, whatever needs to be covered over that. Maybe we're talking about the service and some things that went right. Maybe we're talking about some things that we could be better at. But and then we're talking about big picture stuff. So there's a lot of meetings that happen on
Okay.
Tuesday specifically. So it's very rare that I'm actually in Ruston at the campus I lead, at that location on Tuesday.
Okay.
From that, we're on Wednesday. My day usually starts off in Ruston. There's a small group that I lead there with some incredible men, and then I make my way after that small group to the West Monroe location, where we do some smaller meetings. Usually, there are meetings that happen because of the meetings on Tuesday, so we might be discussing something specific, and
Yeah.
then we do something that I haven't really experienced before that I love about Christ Church, and we have a pastoral leadership small group. So every Wednesday, we devote a time to get together and we study God's word together. We cover some either leadership material, some spiritual growth material, but we do that together. And so there's always really great conversation in that. We grow together, keep each other accountable, and I think that that's so important. That's another thing we could probably talk for days about, but
Yeah.
so that's very instrumental for our pastoral staff here at Christ Church. After that, as the day fills up, then we do have an executive team meeting on Wednesday, and most of the time that covers what happened on Tuesday, covers any issues, and sets us short-term and long-term goals for either that weekend or maybe the season that we're in. Maybe we talk through some of the sermon series or the leadership opportunities we have coming up, as well as any kind of needs from a campus perspective. And so we can probably talk a little bit about this later, but as
Yeah.
a campus pastor, there's more than just ministry. There's these different things we're taking care of. And so that executive meeting is for any type of big picture items that we need to address.
Cool.
Thursday for me, I'll usually go straight to Ruston. And for me, I try to stack Thursday as heavy as I can with individual meetups or ministry meals or meetings or coffees with people that attend Ruston.
Okay.
It's my first day since Sunday that I can devote all of the day to Ruston. And so I try my best to stack that as much as I can and help pastor people, help mentor people if possible, and some of it's been mentoring me. So that Thursday is I usually try to stack it as tight as I can. Um, Friday is if I've missed anyone, I try to make sure that I'm being able to meet with them that day as well. But Friday, I devote to anything that needs to happen around the campus, and some of that's quite random. It's just different things. I'm the only full-time staff member that's at that
Yeah.
campus, and so what that means is if there's anything that's wrong or anything that needs to be fixed or painted or repaired, then I'm focusing on it somehow. If I'm working with someone or volunteer or I'm doing it myself, Fridays usually ends up that it looks like that.
Yeah, which I loved when you and I were kind of giving me the tour of like the worship center everywhere on Friday. There's like something on the floor, like you're taking pictures of it. It's just this immediate glimpse of like, man, this whole thing falls under the purview. So like we're talking ministry ideas and the service, and then like, you're spotting a stain and like making sure that's going to get checked in on
That's
or
right.
whatever. So there's just something ever since then I've just have thought back. I'm like, that was such a picture of probably like what he was saying about the campus pastor life was
Yes.
like, hey, I need to take a picture of this and work on it.
Yeah, totally unplanned. We walked in the auditorium. There's this stain on the carpet. I'm like, where is this stain coming from? So while I'm, taking you around, introducing you to the campus, I'm taking pictures of those things
Yeah.
and be like, this has to be taken care of, and it was.
Yeah.
So our team did a great job.
For sure. Yeah, that was so awesome. So what I'm seeing there is Tuesday and Wednesday are very much you're at the West Monroe campus working with the team, coordinating. I thought one of the interesting points, and I don't probably gonna get all mixed up here, another conversation we want to have was because at that campus they have a lot more full-time staff, you're
Sure.
kind of the one that's connected. So if there's production meetings that need to be in on or all kind of different things, you are the coordinator that's communicating the information back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. Probably more than even the broadcast site here in West Monroe, Sterlington and Ruston rely on our volunteers, and we have amazing teams. Some of those people are could lead campuses themselves, and so I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that. So thankful that God has sent us those people. But quite literally, if there's a production, something that's happening this Sunday, for instance, this Sunday for us is Mother's Day, and so we are playing a Mother's Day video. Well, I'm in that meeting to hear, okay, here's the plan, and so I'm the one that takes that to our production team, who are volunteers, and make sure that they are well prepared for that video
Yeah.
that's being played locally. So just details and odds and ends like that throughout the week. I'm the sounding piece. I'm the in between for those production or worship or sometimes kids meetings, and passing that information along. But all of those volunteers are
Yeah.
incredible, and I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah, which I think that really makes sense. As I left, because somebody could hear, man, that's meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday. Even as I was thinking back to our conversation, that really set some context that was important for me to understand. Was, I mean, you're kind of operating as the connector for multiple teams of volunteers back, which explains for the person who says, man, why would you be in meetings that much? It's just there's a lot of hats that you're wearing as far as even though the teams are going to carry it forward, you getting the information from for them during those couple days that you're in West Monroe.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about that is there is an aspect of like a serve team coordinator that I'm working in, and I truly believe that is as easy as I can make it for the volunteer when they get there on Sunday. I want them to find fulfillment in serving God's kingdom and doing whatever that is, if that's making coffee, if that's greeting, if that's in production or worship. My job is to make it as easy as possible. And sometimes there are things that come up, but when it's easy and it's enjoyable, that's when people are finding fulfillment in serving God's kingdom.
Very cool. Well, I know on Saturday you've said it's kind of an on-call day for you. So talk to me through a little bit through Saturday and Sunday.
Sure. We have part of what Christchurch does that may be a little unique is there are a lot of events. In fact, we have an event coordinator on our staff. And so, in a couple of weekends, so the weekend after Mother's Day, we're having a Freedom Conference, and that Freedom Conference will be on Friday and Saturday during those days. And so, there are times when we're either preparing for something like an event, like a Mother's Day. We're actually going to the campus this Saturday to make sure that we have everything set up for Mother's Day, and then the next weekend we are running that event. And so we
Okay.
kind of view Saturday as just on call and as needed, and so happy to do that.
Yeah. And then what does a Sunday look like as a campus pastor?
So usually Sunday starts pretty early for me. I want to make sure things are right. Like I said, I want to set up our volunteers to succeed, and so I try to get to the campus. If I can get there before 6, I'm happy with that. 6 o'clock is would be good for me. And I just want to. The first thing I do is I try to walk the campus or try to see everything. If there are doors that need to be unlocked, I try to make sure I do that myself. And part of that is just because I need to walk the grounds myself. If there's any random trash or whatever, I try to make sure that's picked up. Those things sound small, but I would rather a production volunteer be able to focus on that, or I'd rather a coffee, hospitality volunteer be able to focus on that hospitality piece rather than some of those things that I could have done. And so I try to make sure everything looks the way it is, everything's ready for the volunteer to arrive. And my process is I would rather get there too early and have a little bit of time to relax and to talk with people than to get there too late and be addressing an issue with a projector that doesn't work up until service time. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the flow there. I try to get there early. We do have two services. We have 9:30 and 11, and so a good portion of those services have two separate teams. So like there's a different set of greeters for the next service. A good portion of those, like the worship team, serve in both services. And so there's just always times to talk with people or to address issues or opportunities as things come up. During the service itself, a lot of my responsibility, besides just being with people and doing my best to love on people, is we have live worship. And so any kind of transition that happens in the service, I'll take care of that, or part of my team takes care of that. And because that's my opportunity to speak in front of our congregation and the people that I pastor, we try to take those very seriously, those transitions very
Yeah.
seriously, and want them to see our heart and that we love them in the middle of that. So that's a big deal for us. So once we transition into sermon, and we can talk about that in more detail if you'd like, but once we transition to sermon, after the sermon, we always take an opportunity for those who don't know Jesus to know Him, and those who want to respond in some way to respond in a way that's meaningful for them. And so, what that looks like for us is we make sure, as someone who's pastoring in that moment, I take over that part of the service
Okay.
at the end. And
Very
so
cool.
we do that twice, and then afterwards, if there is some sort of class, there's a once a month we have a class directly after this, like a growth track or
Yeah.
a new members class maybe. We facilitate that. I have some team that do that, but I try to be a part of that. I try to be at least in the room and do whatever I can to serve that team member.
So, if you're enjoying this conversation, make sure and hit the subscribe button. You can follow along if you're interested in learning more about role clarity, about some of the different positions that we're talking to in the local church, and we're going to be digging into some others in the days to come. Make sure and hit that subscribe. You can also find information in the description below. But